the unspoken link between desire and pain. There is a kind of longing that feels like fire and ice at the same time. It burns in the chest, in the gut, in the mind, and yet it chills you with its mystery. You think you know what you want, a person, a touch, a moment, but beneath that surface something else is moving. Something older. Something that existed before you could even name it. Carl Jung once wrote that the unconscious does not speak in plain language. It speaks in symbols, in images, in impulses that feel natural but are anything but simple. Sexual desire, perhaps the most primal of all human drives, is not immune to this symbolic code. In fact, it is one of its favorite languages. You feel attraction, but behind that pull may be a ghost from the past, whispering through your body. We are taught to think of sexual longing as a present-tense phenomenon, a reaction to beauty, charm, chemistry. We are told it is instinct, biology, the evolutionary urge to reproduce. But what if this was only the visible part of the iceberg? What if every powerful attraction you've ever felt was shaped not only by who's in front of you now, but by the echoes of people, places, and pains you've carried for years? Desire is often painted as a matter of taste. Some say they have a type, as if attraction is a stable and rational preference like a favorite song or flavor. But human psychology rarely works in such neat lines. Jung believed that what you are drawn to often reflects what you have repressed. Not just your dreams but your wounds. Not just your pleasures but your pains. This is not a moral debate about sex. It is not about purity or shame. It is an excavation. A descent into the hidden architecture of the mind, where what you long for is a kind of map, and the places it points to may not be the ones you consciously expect. If sexual attraction can be shaped by wounds, then the people you choose, the fantasies you have, and the patterns you repeat may all be evidence of something you have yet to face. Consider this: the mind is not simply a storage unit for memories. It is a living organism, constantly weaving your past into your present. Every intense feeling you have now is connected by threads to earlier experiences, some of which you have forgotten, and some of which you have buried because they were too heavy to carry in the daylight. But they never disappear. They go underground, into what Jung called the shadow, the part of ourselves that contains everything we refuse to acknowledge. The shadow hides the things we are ashamed of, but also the things that might be too beautiful or vulnerable for us to show the world. When the shadow speaks, it does not knock on the door and introduce itself. It sends signals through dreams, through irrational fears, through sudden attractions that make no logical sense. You might meet someone and feel an electric pull that seems unexplainable. They remind you of no one you know, and yet they do. They carry some feature, some tone, some emotional frequency that resonates with an old, unhealed part of you. We often believe that attraction is forward-looking, pulling us toward what we want to create in the future. But often, it is backward-facing, a gravitational force pulling us into familiar emotional territory, even if that territory was once painful. It is the unconscious mind's way of saying, here. This is where the wound is. This is where the lesson waits. In this light, desire is not merely a biological urge. It is a message in a language most of us never learned to read. It can lead you to beauty, to joy, to love, but it can also lead you into repetition, into reenacting the same story over and over. The question is not just who do I want, but why do I want them? What in me responds to them? And what in them mirrors something I lost, something I needed, or something I feared long ago? To face this is to step into dangerous territory. You may discover that some of your most intense passions were never about the person in front of you, but about a person in your past. A parent, a first love, a figure who marked you in ways you never fully understood. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The shadow will keep speaking, and if you do not learn its language, it will speak through your choices, your relationships, and yes, through your desire. The unspoken link between longing and pain is not meant to rob attraction of its beauty. It is meant to reveal its depth. Because within that depth lies the possibility of transformation. To understand what pulls you is to begin to understand yourself. And perhaps to finally stop mistaking old wounds for new love. Jung, the shadow, and the archetype of desire. Carl Jung saw the human psyche not as a simple collection of thoughts and memories, but as an intricate web, a living system where the conscious and unconscious constantly negotiate for control. In his view, most of what drives us lies below the surface, unseen yet profoundly powerful. And among these hidden forces, two concepts stand out when we speak about desire: the shadow and the archetypes of the Anima and Animus. The shadow, as Jung described it, is the reservoir of everything we have pushed out of sight, the traits we deny, the emotions we suppress, the impulses we label as unacceptable. It is not just a place of darkness and shame, it is also a place of raw energy and potential. but because it is repressed, it finds indirect ways to emerge. Sometimes it surfaces in anger, sometimes in envy, and very often in attraction. Think of the shadow as a mirror that reflects the parts of yourself you do not want to see. When you meet someone who fascinates you or disturbs you, it is often because they carry some piece of your own hidden self. If they embody a quality you've been taught to suppress, boldness, vulnerability, sensuality, defiance, you may feel an intense magnetic pull toward them. This attraction can be exhilarating or unsettling, depending on whether you are ready to face that part of yourself. Alongside the shadow, Jung described the archetypes of the Anima and Animus. The Anima is the inner feminine within a man's psyche. The Animus is the inner masculine within a woman's psyche. These are not simply about gender, they are symbolic figures representing the traits, energies, and ways of being that balance the conscious self. They form through early relationships, especially with the opposite-sex parent, and later shape the way we perceive and connect with others. When you meet someone and feel as though they complete you, it may be because they resemble your inner anima or animus. Your unconscious projects these archetypes onto them, making them feel larger than life, almost mythical. This is why certain encounters feel fated, as if the person was destined to appear. But in truth, much of what you are experiencing is the projection of your own inner figure onto their real-life form. History and mythology are full of these projections. The ancient Greeks told stories of gods falling in love with mortals, of heroes drawn to dangerous lovers who would ultimately lead to their destruction. These tales are not just entertainment, they are symbolic maps of the human psyche. Helen of Troy, whose beauty launched 1,000 ships, was not simply a woman, she was the projection of desire, the embodiment of an unattainable ideal that men were willing to destroy kingdoms for. In literature too we see this pattern. Think of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, two young people who see in each other not just a partner, but an entire world of meaning, rebellion, and freedom from the constraints of their families. Their attraction is more than personal, it is archetypal. It speaks to something deep and ancient in the human soul. But archetypal attraction is double-edged. It can awaken you, revealing new parts of yourself. It can also blind you, causing you to see not the real person before you, but only the figure your unconscious has draped over them. This is why some relationships feel like waking from a dream. The projection eventually fades, and you are left to face the reality of who the other person actually is. Jung believed that integrating the shadow, anima, and animus was essential for personal growth. This integration means recognizing the qualities you have been projecting onto others and reclaiming them as your own. If you are drawn to someone's confidence, perhaps it is your own dormant confidence calling to you. If you are captivated by someone's nurturing presence, maybe it is your own capacity for tenderness waiting to be expressed. The danger lies in remaining unconscious of these dynamics. When you do not recognize your projections, you may spend your life chasing people who fit the mold of your inner archetype, never realizing that the real journey is inward. You may think you are pursuing love, when in truth you are pursuing lost fragments of yourself. This is why certain attractions can be so consuming. They are not merely about chemistry, they are about psychological wholeness. The person you cannot stop thinking about may hold the key, not to their heart, but to your own unfinished story. And yet, the shadow resists exposure. It prefers to act in the background, influencing your desires without revealing its hand. This is where the work becomes difficult. To look beyond the surface, to ask yourself uncomfortable questions, to risk dismantling the illusions you have built around love and attraction. Because if the shadow contains both the shame and the treasure of the psyche, then desire is one of the maps leading to it. And following that map, if you have the courage, can lead not just to another person, but to a more complete version of yourself. The childhood blueprint, how early wounds shape adult desire. Every desire has a birthplace. Long before you experienced your first crush or your first kiss, before you even had the language to describe attraction, your emotional blueprint was already being drawn. This blueprint is not made of conscious decisions or deliberate choices. It is shaped quietly, invisibly in the earliest years of life. And once it is set, it becomes the silent architect of your future desires. Psychologists call it attachment. Jung might have called it the first layer of the unconscious map. In those early years when you were most vulnerable, your brain was making notes. This is what love feels like. This is what safety feels like. This is what rejection feels like. Those notes would later become the criteria not only for who you are drawn to, but for how you respond to them. For a child who grows up with warmth, consistency, and emotional safety, love becomes associated with stability and trust. But for a child who experiences neglect, unpredictability, or emotional distance, love becomes intertwined with longing, anxiety, or the constant need to prove oneself worthy. And here is the cruel twist. The human psyche has a strange tendency to recreate familiar emotional patterns, even if those patterns were painful. It is as if the mind keeps returning to the scene of the crime, hoping this time the ending will be different. Freud called it the repetition compulsion, the drive to reenact old wounds in new situations. Imagine a boy whose mother was physically present but emotionally distant. She was kind but unreachable, offering affection in fleeting moments and withdrawing without explanation. As a man, he may find himself irresistibly drawn to partners who are similarly elusive, people who give just enough attention to keep him hooked, but never enough to make him feel secure. He tells himself he is chasing love, but deep down he is chasing resolution. Or imagine a girl whose father was affectionate but unpredictable, swinging between warmth and criticism. As an adult, she may feel the strongest chemistry with men who mirror that unpredictability, men who make her feel cherished one moment and criticized the next. To others it looks like she is choosing poorly. To her unconscious mind, it looks like an opportunity to finally win the love she could never fully secure as a child. These patterns are not conscious choices. They are imprinted reflexes, wired into the nervous system during the formative years. When you encounter someone who matches your emotional blueprint, it feels like home. But home is not always a safe place. It can be familiar and dangerous at the same time. This is why people often say, "I don't know why I keep falling for the wrong person." From the outside it seems illogical. From the inside it feels inevitable. Your unconscious is not choosing based on compatibility or shared values, it is choosing based on familiarity. It is drawn to what it knows, even if what it knows once caused you pain. Carl Jung believed that these early experiences become woven into the archetypes of our anima and animus. If your first models of love were nurturing and stable, your inner archetype carries those qualities. If they were distant, critical, or chaotic, those qualities become part of the archetype too, and they influence the kind of people you feel drawn to later. This is not only about parental relationships. Early friendships, sibling dynamics, even cultural and societal influences play a role. The stories you were told about love, in your home, in your community, in the media, all contribute to your blueprint. If you were taught that love is sacrifice, you may feel most attracted to situations that require you to give more than you receive. If you were taught that passion comes with drama, you may associate calm relationships with boredom. The brain learns through association. If comfort and chaos arrive together in your childhood, your body will feel oddly comfortable in chaos as an adult. If affection was paired with control, you might unconsciously seek control in your relationships, mistaking it for love. But here is the most important and unsettling truth. Desire often follows the blueprint, not because it is what you truly want, but because it is what your unconscious believes is possible. A child who never felt fully loved grows into an adult who may believe, without realizing it, that deep, unconditional love is unattainable. And so they pursue relationships that confirm that belief, even while consciously wishing for something better. The tragedy is not that the blueprint exists. The tragedy is when we live our entire lives without realizing it is there, when we mistake the architecture of our early wounds for the natural shape of our hearts. Yet there is a way forward. The first step is recognition. To notice the pattern. To ask yourself, who am I drawn to and why? What qualities do they share with the people who first taught me about love? Do I feel excitement because they are truly right for me, or because they match something familiar from my past? This is not about blaming parents or dwelling on childhood. It is about understanding the origin of the forces that move us. Jung often spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole, as the integration of the unconscious into the conscious. Part of that integration is tracing the thread of your desires back to their beginnings, and deciding with awareness whether you still wish to follow them. Because until you rewrite the blueprint, it will keep drafting the same story. It will hand you the same characters with different names, the same plot in a different setting, the same heartbreak dressed in a different disguise. And you will think it is fate when it is only repetition. The childhood blueprint does not have to define you forever. But it will, until you decide to become its architect rather than its prisoner. Pleasure is a mask for pain. Desire seduces us with the promise of pleasure. It tells us that what we are seeking will make us whole, that the rush of connection or the heat of passion is an answer in itself. But the truth is far less romantic, and far more unsettling. Sometimes what we call pleasure is not a signal of what is good for us, but a disguise for what once hurt us. The human brain is an expert in association. When two experiences occur together often enough, they become linked in the mind, even if the connection is irrational or harmful. If love and pain were paired in your earliest relationships, Your nervous system may have learned to associate one with the other. The result is a paradox. The very thing that should warn you away, the ache, the uncertainty, the volatility, starts to feel like proof that the connection is real. Neuroscience shows that intense emotional states, whether joy or fear, activate similar biochemical pathways. Adrenaline, dopamine, and oxytocin can flood the body both in moments of genuine intimacy and in moments of high-stress longing. This is why the roller coaster of an unstable relationship can feel addictive. The lows heighten the highs and the highs disguise the cost of the lows. This phenomenon is at the heart of trauma repetition compulsion. The unconscious is drawn back to situations that echo an original wound, not because it enjoys suffering but because it is trying, in a twisted way, to resolve it. If a parent's love was unpredictable, your mind might be unconsciously seeking out partners whose affection is just as conditional, hoping that this time, you will do something differently and win. On the surface, this pursuit looks like passion. Beneath it, it is a reenactment, the stage set by your nervous system to replay an old scene until it gets the ending it has been craving for years. The tragedy is that the ending rarely changes unless the script itself does. This link between pleasure and pain is not confined to personal relationships. History is filled with figures whose most celebrated art, political victories, or creative breakthroughs emerged from an obsessive entanglement with people or causes that ultimately consumed them. The Renaissance painter Caravaggio created works of astonishing beauty while living a life of constant violence and scandal. The emotional and psychological chaos around him was not separate from his genius, it was woven into it. Similarly, countless love stories across centuries glamorize this fusion of longing and suffering. The great romances of literature, from Wuthering Heights to Anna Karenina, portray desire not as a gentle warmth but as a fever that burns everything it touches. These stories resonate because on some level we recognize the truth they hide in plain sight. For many of us, the intensity of passion is heightened by the shadow of pain. But what happens when this pattern becomes the only way we know how to feel alive? When quiet, steady love feels foreign. When kindness feels suspicious. We may unconsciously sabotage relationships that lack the drama we've been conditioned to equate with connection. We might leave the calm partner for the one who triggers that intoxicating cocktail of anxiety and excitement, mistaking the rush for love and the absence of chaos for the absence of passion. This is how pleasure becomes a mask for pain. It tricks you into chasing the very situations that keep you from healing. It persuades you that the spike of dopamine in the presence of someone unpredictable is proof of destiny, when in reality it is proof of a wound being touched. To break this cycle requires a brutal kind of honesty. To ask yourself whether the intensity you feel in someone's presence is truly about them, or about the history they awaken in you. It is to separate pleasure from familiarity, attraction from reenactment. Jung would argue that until you bring this awareness into consciousness, your shadow will continue to seek resolution through repetition, using desire as bait. And you will continue to follow, thinking you are chasing love, when you are really chasing the hope of undoing a pain that belongs to another time. The mask is seductive. But once you see it for what it is, it cannot hold the same power over you. Modern society's amplification of your wounds. If your personal history shapes the blueprint of your desire, then modern society is the architect that builds skyscrapers on top of it. The raw materials, your early wounds, your unconscious patterns, your shadow, are already there. But in the hands of media, advertising, and digital culture, these personal vulnerabilities become tools for mass manipulation. We live in an age where attraction is not just a private matter. It is a product, a commodity, something that can be engineered, packaged, and sold back to you, often using the very insecurities you've carried since childhood. This is not accidental. It is a calculated design. Marketing psychology has long understood that human beings are driven less by reason and more by emotion. If you want to sell something, whether it's a fragrance, a dating app, or a political candidate, you don't appeal to logic. You appeal to longing. You find the wound and you press on it. The fashion industry doesn't simply sell clothes, it sells archetypes. The cologne ad doesn't just promise you a scent, it promises you the attention of the archetypal lover. The social media influencer doesn't just show you a lifestyle, they embody a projection, the anima or animus figure your unconscious is primed to recognize. Every image, every pose, every soundtrack is chosen to awaken something you can't quite name but can definitely feel. Even the design of social media feeds plays into this. Infinite scroll, algorithmic targeting, and curated beauty standards do not just keep you engaged, they keep you emotionally hungry. The dopamine spikes you get from likes and validation mimic the same neurochemical loops that bind you to an unpredictable lover. Platforms reward the most provocative, envy-inducing, or desire-triggering content because it keeps you coming back for more. And then there's the dating economy itself. Apps don't just connect people, they amplify comparison and scarcity. Swiping becomes a slot machine, each profile a potential jackpot. But the jackpot isn't love, it's the rush. The same rush you feel when your unresolved patterns are triggered in real life. Only now the triggers are endless, engineered, and monetized. Carl Jung warned about what he called mass man, the state where individuals lose touch with their own inner life and instead become part of a collective unconscious shaped by external forces. In a media-saturated world, the collective unconscious is no longer shaped primarily by myth and tradition. It is shaped by algorithms and corporations. The images and narratives that flood your daily life are not neutral. They are carefully designed to tap into your archetypes, your shadow, and your most formative emotional imprints. Think about how the entertainment industry portrays love and attraction. The stories that dominate aren't about slow, stable connection. They're about intensity, obsession, and impossible odds. The will they, won't they dynamic keeps audiences hooked because it mirrors the intermittent reinforcement of unstable relationships. Your brain learns that love is exciting only when it's uncertain, that desire must be accompanied by struggle. Even politics uses these dynamics. Leaders and movements often rise by positioning themselves as the savior figure, the projected animus or anima, that will fulfill unmet collective needs. They tap into longing, fear, and nostalgia, offering emotional resolution to wounds that exist not just in individuals but in entire societies. The result is a culture that doesn't just reflect your wounds, it feeds them. It keeps you cycling through the same patterns, mistaking stimulation for fulfillment. And because the triggers are constant, you rarely have space to step back and ask whether what you're feeling is real attraction or manufactured craving. This is why awareness is so dangerous to the system. When you begin to see how desire is being shaped, not only by your past but by a vast, coordinated present, you become harder to control. You stop chasing every image, every fantasy, every impossible promise. You start questioning why certain people, products, or lifestyles pull you so strongly, and whether that pull is leading you toward growth or keeping you in a loop. The uncomfortable truth is that the world benefits from you staying unconscious of your wounds. An unresolved person is a predictable consumer. A person chasing an unhealed need will buy more, click more, swipe more, vote more impulsively. The economy of attention and desire depends on it. But there is a quiet rebellion in awareness. To look at the ad, the influencer, the perfectly staged romance and think, I see what you're doing. To feel the pull and ask, who taught me to want this? Because if your desire has been shaped by trauma and amplified by society, then waking up to it is not just personal growth, it is an act of resistance. Desire has always been treated like a wildfire, feared, suppressed, or allowed to burn without restraint. But Jung offered a third path. Not to extinguish the fire, not to let it consume everything in its path, but to learn how to walk through it without being destroyed. This is the heart of individuation, the slow, deliberate process of becoming whole. It is not about becoming pure, or good, or perfect. It is about seeing the full architecture of your psyche, including the rooms you've kept locked for years. The shadow is not just a vault of shame, it is a treasury of unlived life. And our desires are often the key that fits its lock. When you turn toward your desires with conscious awareness, you begin to notice something strange. They are rarely random. The faces you find beautiful, the voices that make your pulse quicken, the fantasies that visit you uninvited, they have a lineage. Each one carries threads that lead back to moments long before you knew the word attraction. Perhaps the first time you felt safe. Or the first time you felt seen. Or the first time you felt powerless. To understand this is to reclaim choice. When you can trace a desire back to its root, it loses its power to drag you by the throat. It becomes something you can sit with, examine, and, if you wish, say no to. This work is not theoretical. It is daily practice. It is journaling the patterns you see in the people you chase and the ones you push away. It is writing down the details of recurring dreams and asking, why this person? Why this scene? It is noticing how your attractions change when you are confident versus when you are lonely. It is sitting in therapy and daring to speak the truth about the kinds of people you have always been drawn to, without dressing it up to sound respectable. It is looking at your earliest memories of intimacy and asking yourself what was present, and what was missing. And perhaps most difficult of all, it is practicing conscious relationships. Entering connections with the awareness that you will project parts of yourself onto the other person, and that they will do the same to you. This isn't a flaw in human nature. It is human nature. The difference lies in whether you can see it happening and work with it instead of being ruled by it. Individuation is not about purging desire but about decoding it. Your attractions, once seen clearly, become maps. Some lead to joy, some to danger, some to old wounds you didn't know were still bleeding. But they all lead to you. And if you follow them with awareness, even the ones born from pain can take you to places of freedom. Jung believed that the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine archetypes, are often projected onto lovers. We see in them the qualities we have not yet integrated in ourselves. The gentle man who longs for fierce women may be longing for his own unclaimed strength. The fierce woman who seeks gentle men may be longing for her own buried softness. The task is not to stop seeking these qualities in others, but to bring them home. To look at your desire and ask, what is this showing me about myself? When you integrate what you've been projecting, you are no longer chasing ghosts. You are choosing people not out of desperation but out of alignment. The shift is subtle but profound. Desire, once an uncontrollable force, becomes a compass you can actually read. You may still feel the same pull towards certain types of people, but now you see the why behind it. And sometimes you will choose to follow it anyway, but this time with your eyes open. The haunting truth is this: your desire has been speaking to you all along. Not in the language of logic, but in the coded poetry of the unconscious. Every crush, every obsession, every pattern you thought was random has been a signal from the parts of you that refuse to die. You are not broken because you want. You are human. Wanting is the way your psyche calls you toward itself. Even the most irrational attractions carry information about what you've lost, what you've denied, and what you secretly hope is still possible. So instead of asking how to get rid of desire, perhaps the better question is, how do I learn to listen? Listening is not passive. It is active excavation. It means making space for silence so you can actually hear what is beneath the noise. It means paying attention to your body, the tightening in your chest, the heat in your face, the flutter in your stomach, and asking, when have I felt this before? It means letting go of the shame that tells you your desires make you unworthy. Shame clouds the message. Curiosity reveals it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll come to see that the person you've been searching for all this time was never really out there in the first place. Every longing, every pulse of attraction, every impossible fantasy was a breadcrumb leading you back to yourself. The paradox is almost cruel. We spend our lives chasing others to find what was ours all along. But if you can face that truth without bitterness, something extraordinary happens. You stop being a hostage to your longing. You start being its interpreter. And in that moment, desire stops being a trap. It becomes an invitation. Perhaps the deepest longing is not for another person's touch or gaze or approval. Perhaps the deepest longing is to finally welcome home the parts of you that you exiled long ago. And when you do, you will discover that the fire of desire, once feared and mistrusted, can light the way forward. Not as a blaze that consumes you, but as a steady flame that warms and guides you. The kind of flame that makes you whole.